Did you call bank? I call game.
What's up, Pack Nation? It is Pack here, and in today's video I wanted to talk about my career and my player and which team you should play for NBA 2K20. Now, in the past two 2Ks, you've been able to pick which team you want to play for in my career off the bat. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen in this 2K, especially because there's a draft combine. But even if you can't pick the team you want to go to in the beginning, you can probably pick your team for the next season. And which team you play for matters when it comes to badge progression and trying to make your overall as good as possible. So it matters. Before this video starts, be an OG, join the Pack Nation, and subscribe. Let's get this video started. Now, to start this video off, I'm going to go position by position and tell you which teams you should play for depending on the position you're going to play, from point guard all the way down to center. I'm going to start off with the point guard position with the Los Angeles Clippers. I think it's pretty obvious to tell why this team needs a point guard. Now, Patrick Beverley is a great point guard, but you have Lou Williams, who, to be honest, is going to be coming off the bench, but I guess they wanted to start him in 2K. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Montrezl Harrell. And then you also have Patrick Beverley, who's the only person on this team who's not at least an 80 overall. That is the only hole on this team. You should absolutely play for the Clippers. You have the Finals MVP in Kawhi Leonard. You have Paul George, who's one of the best two-way players in the NBA with Kawhi Leonard. Montrezl Harrell was one of the most improved players in the year. Lou Williams is one of the best six-man in the NBA, arguably the best six-man in the NBA. And then you have Patrick Beverley, who you could totally replace and be like a 90 overall, and this team would be absolutely impossible to stop. You really should be playing for the Clippers for NBA 2K20. But let's say you don't want to play for the Clippers. You can play for the other LA team who needs a point guard, and that is the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, this team isn't as great as the Clippers just because there's two players who are not in the 80 overall club with Rondo and Danny Green. So I guess if you wanted to be a shooting guard, you could also play for this team. But Rondo's a 76, so if you were a great point guard, you would have yourself as an amazing player. You have James, literally LeBron James, arguably the best player in the NBA on your team, Kyle Kuzma, who's good, and Anthony Davis, the best power forward in the NBA, playing at the center position for your team. Your team is ridiculously good, and you should immediately win a championship if you're really that good. I mean, either way, either Los Angeles team you want to play for, if you're going to be playing in the Staples Center, be a point guard, play for one of these teams, trust me. Now for the shooting guard position. Now the shooting guard position is going to be a little bit different. See, here we are with the Philadelphia 76ers, and you have Ben Simmons, Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, Al Horford, Joel Embiid. Every single player on this team is an 80 overall at least, but as you can tell, is one player who's in barely an 80 overall, and that is Josh Richardson, who is the shooting guard position. If you filled that and it became like an 85 or maybe like a 90 overall, who's going to stop this team? It's like basically if they had Jimmy Butler again. That's basically what this would do. And this is absolutely necessary. You should absolutely play for the Sixers for this team. You should probably be a good shooter too, because that's like their biggest need is a great shooter. Ben Simmons could dish you off for some threes. You could be a ridiculously good scorer for this team. Now, Josh Richardson is good, but you could be even better than Josh Richardson. And that's why the Sixers would probably need you. And you could probably win a championship for them in 2K20. But the other team is the team right next to them, the Milwaukee Bucks. See, they have shooting guard Wesley Matthews. Now, let's look at their team. They have Eric Bledsoe, who proved to be pretty good in the playoffs. Chris Middleton, who we know is pretty solid. Giannis, who is arguably also the best player in the NBA. And Brook Lopez, who isn't an 80 overall, but he's right there. If you end up being a really good shooting guard, you're going to want to play for the Bucks because, again, you're probably going to be one of the best team in the East, like arguably at least. And you're going to be playing with Giannis with great backup. And, I mean, why not? Sure, the Milwaukee Bucks aren't the coolest team to play for, like the Sixers, Lakers, Clippers. But still, if you want to win championships and get great points and do amazing and win, you want to play for the Bucks. Now for the small forward position. First of all, don't be a small forward in NBA 2K20. They have completely nerfed that position. It is not a very good position for NBA 2K20. But if you really insist on being a small forward, I suggest you play for the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Denver Nuggets have Jamal Murray, who did amazing last season. Gary Harris, who is underrated, to be honest. He should be at least an 80 overall. Then they have Torrey Craig, which you could definitely replace. You have Paul Millsap on the team, who's an 82, and Nikola Jokic, arguably one of the best centers in the NBA. Now, that small forward position is really, really weak. You could jump in there, make an immediate impact. They could use every single skill you have. If you want to be an athletic slasher, that's the team for you if you're a small forward. You want to be a great shooter, a great defender, any way you want to see it, that is the team you want to play for. The Denver Nuggets is the way to go. And I think that honestly, you could probably win a championship with that team too with your player. Now, there are other options. Let's say you want to go to the East, you can go to the Indiana Pacers. They have Malcolm Brogdon, Victor Oladipo, who's raw. The player that's in the middle is Jeremy Lamb, the small forward position. Then they have TJ Warren and Miles Turner. Everybody's in the 80 overall club except for Jeremy Lamb, which you can absolutely replace. And if you replace him, you're going to have an all 80 overall team. The Indiana Pacers in the East would be unstoppable, and you and Victor Oladipo would run house and maybe even win a championship. But let's say you don't like either of those teams. Let's say you want to play for a team that you're more excited about. What about the Raptors, who just won a championship with Kawhi Leonard? Someone needs to replace Kawhi Leonard. Right now it's Norman Powell. You could totally replace that with your player, make a Kawhi Leonard build, and redo maybe back-to-back for the Raptors if you do that, right? You still have Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, you have Pascal Siakam, and Marc Gasol. You replace Norman Powell with your small forward, and it's a wrap. You could totally win a championship. But let's say you don't want to play for any of these teams. I do have one more option, and that is H-Town, the Houston Rockets. You have two MVPs, Russell Westbrook and James Harden at the 1 and 2. In the middle, you have Eric Gordon, who you could totally replace. You have PJ Tucker, who's a 79 overall, and Clint Capella, who's an 85. If you replace Eric Gordon with your 90 overall, you have 3 90 overalls on this team, and it's a wrap. Like, who's going to beat the Rockets? Like, if you're a small forward, you have to play for the Rockets, because who is going to stop you? Really, let's be real. The only thing I feel is that you're not going to get a lot of touches because James Harden and Russell Westbrook are going to be super greedy with the ball and barely ever pass it to you, so that might be a little predicament. Besides that, though, it should be fine. Now for the power forward position, which I know a lot of you guys like to play as. The team that I think is probably the no-brainer is the Utah Jazz. You have Mike Conley at the 87 overall, Donovan Mitchell 88 shooting guard, Bojan Bogdanovic at an 83, and then Joe Ingles 79 power forward. You replace him, and then you have Rudy Gobert at the 88. Everyone is not only an 80 overall, at least in this team, but everybody is basically a high 80 overall besides Bojan. And this team would be absolutely ridiculous. You could bring them their first ever NBA championship. The Utah Jazz would be a problem with a proper power forward. I mean, I'm not saying Joe Ingles is bad, but you could be way better than Jingles, and you could make this team a contender immediately with your my player. Now for the Brooklyn Nets is the other option for the power forward position. Now you have Kyrie Irving already 91 overall, Joe Harris 78, which isn't the best, player on this team, right? But is a solid shooting guard that will work. Kevin Durant 96, and he won't be injured at the start of 2K, so that's good. Wilson Chandler 75 overall at the power forward, which is what you're going to replace with. And then DeAndre Jordan 81, you can just lob to him whenever you needed to. Great defender. It's a way better team to play for it than the Utah Jazz. Let's be real, the Brooklyn Nets are pretty cool. Honestly, if I do a power forward build, I'm probably going to play for the Nets. This is definitely the team to play for if you want to be a power forward in a cool team. Bring the Nets a championship. It would be fun. And again, you would be raw. If you're in the 90 overall, you have 3 90 overall players on this team with a good DeAndre Jordan and Joe Harris, who's at least solid. And finally, the center position. Now, this one was actually kind of the hardest one to find because I feel like a lot of teams that needed a center, I feel like a lot of teams already had the center they needed for the most part. At least good teams, right? But this is the one I think you should play for. The New Orleans Pelicans. Now let's look at this at least for a second. Now you're looking at this and you're saying Lonzo's the only player on this team that's not an 80 overall. So don't they need a point guard? Well, Lonzo's good and he's hype and people like Lonzo. Derek Favors, on the other hand, first of all, he's a power forward, so he shouldn't even be a starter, at least in my opinion. I mean, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he's a power forward, not a center. So you go in there, have a high 80 overall rating, and then you could have Zion Williamson on your team, Brandon Ingram, Drew Holiday, and Lonzo lobbing it to you the whole time. Your team would be unstoppable. You would make the Pelicans immediately a serious team, and you have all young players that you can grow with. And I know that Lonzo and Ingram are in the My Career trailer, so you can play with them, and it'd feel more natural in the trailer as well. If you're a center, I think this is definitely the team to play for. It makes the most sense to me. But let's say you're not a really fan of the New Orleans Pelicans. The other team I thought about, and this one's kind of like a maybe though. Like this one's kind of a reach, but again, the center position wasn't great. It is the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the Spurs have DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus at 87s overall apiece, and then you have Jonte Murray and Derek White at 78 overalls apiece. But to be honest, both of them should be in the 80s overall. They both played amazing when they did play, and I know Jonte Murray was injured, and Derek White is a new face, but Derek White was really good in the playoffs, and then Jonte Murray was really good when he wasn't injured. Jakob Poeltl, though, is kind of so I'd much rather replace Jakob Poeltl with your my player. You would have an amazing team. No, it's not as good as all the other options, but if you're a center, this is going to work out for you, and you could probably win a championship with the Spurs if you're playing really, really well. That's it for this video, you guys. Which team do you want to play for? Leave it in the comments below, and if you like my channel, give it a sub, and I'll see you guys next time.
Did you call bank?